Chapter 21 Claw Marks on the Shield. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Steve Rogers. Logan frowned and subconsciously covered his face. Have we met? Steve was stunned when he heard his name. It was not surprising that the other party could call out his name. After all, with the end of the New York War, his name had long been known among the people. What surprised him was that the other party's voice had an illusion of déjà vu. In the faint moonlight, the general outline of Logan's face seemed to overlap slightly with an old friend. Maybe not. Logan shook his head. It was not a wise choice for the two to meet now, but looking at Steve's expression, Logan immediately realized that he was overthinking. Steve Rogers in the blue and white uniform in front of him seemed to have a hard time remembering the teammates he had fought side by side with. This was a good thing, even though he and Steve were comrades in the same camp during World War II. His friendship with Steve was not as deep as Bucky. Now Steve is the glorious Captain America. While he is just an old and weak mutant wanted by the government, Steve might fight the government for Bucky, but he would never break up with the government for himself. He would definitely stand on the side of the government. Your voice sounds familiar. Steve stared at Logan and continued to speak. Really? Logan suddenly smiled. Maybe we really know each other. Since we know each other, let our old friend go. Don't even think about it, buddy. Steve shook his head and blocked the round shield in front of him. He would not let an unidentified guy who openly attacked S.H.I.E.L.D. leave. However, as soon as Steve's voice fell, Logan did not stop at all, but rushed towards Steve. Phew. The sudden acceleration made Logan look as fast as the wind, and his clenched fist hit Steve's thigh without hesitation. He knew the power of this vibranium round shield. Even his steel claws could hardly penetrate the shield, but the disadvantage of the vibranium shield is also obvious. It is too small. When it is blocked on the chest, the part below the waist cannot be blocked at all. Bang. A dull sound suddenly sounded, and Logan spared no effort to punch Steve's thigh. The pain from the muscle made Steve gasp, and the powerful impact force pushed him back several steps. Steve stabilized his body, endured the pain from his thigh, and looked up at Logan. An old man in his 60s or 70s could have such explosive power. If he hadn't been injected with super serum, his body's toughness would have reached an unimaginable level. Then this punch would have broken his thigh bone directly. Just as Steve was stunned, Logan suddenly took out the pistol from his waist and pulled the trigger at Steve's head without hesitation. The hot bullet rolled out of the barrel, and the fire from the muzzle made Steve's pupils suddenly change, and he quickly raised the round shield to block it. Ding ding ding. The high-speed rotating bullets were all blocked by the vibranium round shield, making a crisp clanging sound of steel collision. Logan's fingers kept pulling, and in less than 3 seconds, the bullets in the magazine were quickly emptied. As the last bullet was fired, Logan decisively threw away the pistol, crouched down, supported himself with his left hand and left foot, and quickly swept his right foot towards Steve's calf. The speed was so fast that Steve, who had his head tucked under the round shield, had no time to react. He was directly hit by Logan's sweeping lower body. The huge force made his calf almost feel like the muscles were broken, and his body was unstable, and he fell heavily to the ground in an instant. Seeing this, Logan's eyes were cold, and he suddenly flew up, like a wolf that pounced on its prey in the night. Steve, who was lying on the ground, had his pupils shrank sharply, and raised his shield again to block it. Bang! His fists hit the round shield heavily, but did not cause any damage. Steve lay on the ground, supporting the round shield with one hand, and swung at Logan's head with the other hand. Logan's expression condensed, and he exerted force with both fists, and his body bounced up quickly. Steve's fist almost brushed past his nose. Taking advantage of this gap, Steve turned around and jumped up quickly, staring at Logan in front of him, his eyes full of surprise. After this short fight, he could see that Logan's fighting skills were so rich that he would not miss any opportunity at all. As long as he had a gap in his defense, he would decisively attack the gap. And he even clearly understood the defensive power of his vibranium shield and kept avoiding his shield. With such fighting qualities, even he, a veteran of World War II who had participated in major battles, looked like a rookie at this time. Steve understood that if he continued to passively defend, he would not be able to gain an advantage over the opponent. Thinking of this, Steve did not hesitate and rushed towards Logan. The vibranium round shield in his hand seemed to turn into a blade, constantly slashing at Logan. He could not continue to passively defend, he had to actively attack and establish an advantage. Logan looked at the vibranium shield that was slashing at him, knowing that he couldn't take it head-on, so he dodged it quickly, and at the same time, taking advantage of Steve's inertia after the slash, he punched him in the chest again, but Steve was a veteran who had experienced many battles, and he reacted instantly, blocking Logan's fist with his other hand in front of his chest. The two sides wrestled together instantly, and the speed and power they unleashed were terrifying attacks that ordinary people could not bear. Even the surrounding containers were affected. As long as one of the two simply bumped into them, a big hole would instantly dent the heavy iron box. However, although Captain America had strong physical fitness, he had been frozen for 70 years after all, and many of his fighting skills were already behind the times. On the other hand, although Logan was physically weak and his strength and speed were slightly inferior to Captain America, the fighting skills he had cultivated for nearly 200 years were not comparable to Steve. With his superb fighting skills, he even suppressed Steve and gained the upper hand. The two sides fought for several minutes without any results, and seemed to have reached some tacit understanding and retreated several meters away, staring at each other in the night. "Were you a soldier before?" Steve could see that Logan's fighting skills were very similar to American military fighting skills, and such fighting skills would only be popular in the army. Moreover, Logan's fighting skills were very superb, and he was definitely a senior veteran who mixed in the barracks. Logan did not answer, staring at Steve with wolf-like eyes, and rushed towards Steve with both legs at the same time. He heard footsteps coming from a distance. It seemed that the support of S.H.I.E.L.D. had arrived. If he was surrounded by S.H.I.E.L.D., he would have no chance to escape. He had to deal with Steve as soon as possible and escape quickly before the large number of support from S.H.I.E.L.D. arrived. "We have all been soldiers, maybe we can sit down and talk." Steve looked at Logan who was rushing towards him. His expression suddenly changed, and he shouted while throwing the round shield with all his strength. The round shield rotated at a high speed, and the speed was even comparable to the propeller of a helicopter. The force it burst out could even bend thick steel in an instant. Bang! But what surprised Steve was that Logan opened his hand and caught the round shield like a cannonball with his bare hands. Seeing this scene, Steve's pupils widened, and he couldn't help but take a breath. Not many people can block the attack he just made so easily. Could it be that he is also a super soldier? Steve had some guesses in his heart. However, before he could think deeply, Logan swung the round shield back with force. Steve didn't dare to be arrogant, and quickly raised his hands to catch it. The powerful force brought by the round shield made his arms feel numb, but Logan didn't give him a chance to relax, and his body rushed again, like a hurricane, and instantly reached Steve. Bang bang bang. The iron fist fell as fast as raindrops, and Steve raised the round shield to block, but the powerful force still beat him back in embarrassment. The shield vibrated violently in this fierce attack, and a buzzing sound resounded through the night. Just as Steve was thinking about how to fight back, suddenly, a dazzling white light flashed. Whoosh! At some point, a dazzling steel claw suddenly appeared under the moonlight, and chopped down heavily on the vibranium shield. Bang! Swish! The harsh sound of steel friction resounded. The extreme speed even made Steve unable to see clearly what was going on. Before he could come to his senses, he suddenly felt a sharp pain in his abdomen, and the stomach acid rolled up to his throat. At some point, Logan's knee had hit Steve's abdomen hard. The powerful force instantly knocked him several meters away, and he hit a container hard, and the iron box instantly dented a large piece. "Captain Rogers, see you again if we are lucky." Logan quickly retracted his steel claws, put his palm in front of his eyebrows, and swung it casually, turning around and fleeing into the darkness. Steve leaned against the dented container and wanted to get up and chase, but the severe pain in his abdomen made him unable to move at all. Moreover, the 3 subtle claw marks on the vibranium shield also made him completely lose the desire to chase. Shield, broken. Chapter 22 Old Comrades in Steve's Memory. You are listening at novelfull.audio. This, how is it possible? Steve gently stroked the vibranium shield, and the clear cracks returned by his touch made him unable to believe his eyes for a moment. This is not an ordinary peeling paint, but there are really 3 deep claw marks. He couldn't believe that something in this world could leave traces on the vibranium shield. Vibranium is the hardest metal currently known, and even direct fire from a fighter jet's cannon cannot leave any dents on it. How did that person just do it? "Captain, are you okay?" That when Steve was shocked, there was a rush of footsteps in his ears. Rumlow, who originally led people to chase Samuel and Conrad, finally came back. Seeing Steve sitting on the ground with a frown on his face, Rumlow hurried forward and knelt down to check Steve's injuries. The other agents hurriedly checked the companions lying on the ground and the Black Widow's casualties. "I'm fine." Steve stood up slowly. Although Logan's attack was very fierce, he was a super soldier injected with super serum after all, and such injuries were not a cause for concern. He ran away. "That guy's strength is terrifying." Steve spoke in a calm voice, unable to help but recall the details of the battle just now. Although the opponent could not quickly defeat him, his fierce offensive and superb fighting skills did defeat him step by step. If you fight with it for a long time without foreign aid, you will definitely lose in the end. Thinking of this, Steve couldn't help but frown. I didn't catch his accomplices either. Langlam's angry speech interrupted Steve's contemplation, and he gritted his teeth and said, "Those guys are like mice, disappearing in the blink of an eye. In addition, there are too many containers here and the terrain is complicated, so there's nothing you can do about them." Steve nodded, looked at the open container, and said solemnly, "The focus is not on people, hurry up and see if the goods are still there." As soon as these words came out, Langlam reacted instantly and quickly took Steve into the container, turned on the flashlight and searched among the pile of cargo boxes. No. Langlam looked at the goods carefully and did not find the 2 boxes of BU-26 and BU-27. "Damn it, which group of people took you away?" Langlam rummaged around in the cargo box unwillingly. "Stop looking for it." At this time, Natasha's voice suddenly came. Natasha looked very bad at this time. She did not have Steve's strong physical fitness. Logan's heavy blow made her look pale. With the help of an agent, she slowly walked into the container. "We have all been fooled. There is a problem with the intelligence. The goods are not here at all." Natasha saw Logan enter the container with her own eyes, but ultimately returned without success. She was sure that at least the goods did not fall into the hands of the other party. Steve frowned, and after thinking for a moment, he immediately ordered, "Report to the headquarters, send more manpower, seal off the entire terminal, and search every container." Roram nodded heavily, immediately walked out of the container, and contacted SHIELD headquarters to ask them to send more people over. Steve turned to look at the other agents. "You go and pull out all the surveillance videos in the dock, including all the surveillance information on nearby streets. You must find the traces of the attackers just now and determine their escape route." Several agents also quickly turned around and took action. Steve and Natasha were the only 2 people left in the container. By the light of the flashlight in Steve's hand, Natasha noticed 3 scratches on the vibranium shield. "Captain, your shield." Natasha stepped forward with an expression of disbelief, and lightly ran her fingers over the scratches. After feeling the bumpy feeling from her fingertips, she retracted her fingers as if she was electrocuted. "Is it that person just now?" Natasha raised her head sharply, her eyes widened, unable to believe the facts in front of her. Someone can actually leave traces on vibranium. Steve's expression also became very solemn. He looked down at the shield on his arm and gently touched the claw marks. Looking at the 3 sharp claw marks, he suddenly thought of a person in his mind. "Speaking of which, I am reminded of an old comrade. His steel claws still impress me to this day." Steve murmured, his expression lost in memories. "Old comrade." Natasha was stunned. Steve had been frozen for 70 years. The people he could call his old comrades were probably hundreds of years old. Steve nodded. "An old comrade in World War II, but I might have been overly worried. It's been more than 70 years, and there's no way he could have survived to this day. Even if he could have survived to this day, he would still be a centenarian." Natasha nodded noncommittally, "But the identity of this group of people is definitely not simple. Whether it is Logan's superb fighting skills or the sophisticated weapons in their team, they are definitely not something that ordinary organizations can achieve. After thinking for a moment, Natasha suddenly said, could it be a Hydra agent? That she believes that apart from S.H.I.E.L.D., the only organization with such capabilities is Hydra. Hydra? Steve's expression suddenly became extremely disgusted. I thought they had all their heads chopped off during World War II. The heads that Hydra cuts off will grow back. Natasha sighed helplessly. Let's report the situation to Nick Fury first. He needs to pay a price for his wrong intelligence. Steve nodded, turned around and walked out of the container. He subconsciously glanced at the place where the previous fight took place. The dazzling steel claws under the moonlight flashed in his mind, and his brows instantly furrowed. Those steel claws look so similar, is it really a coincidence? There is also a super soldier with claws in Hydra. Meanwhile, in a hotel near the port, the four people gathered in the room. The failure of the mission made several of them a little disgraced, and the one with the ugliest look was none other than Conrad. Idiot, who asked you to kill S.H.I.E.L.D. people? Logan stood in front of Conrad and shouted angrily with a serious expression, S.H.I.E.L.D. and the Avengers are inextricably linked. If we offend them, even the Lawrence family will not dare to protect us. Conrad sat in a chair, his head buried in silence, holding a beer can tightly in his hand. Logan stared at Conrad. Sometimes he wanted to kill this idiot. If S.H.I.E.L.D. really investigates the agent's death, it will be useless even if he runs away from the United States. Samuel shrank his head. He noticed the anger in Logan, and he was so scared that he didn't dare to speak at all. However, Joshua was quite calm. In order to ease the mood of the team, he quickly said, Conrad was just impulsive. Besides, there is no point getting angry now. The fact that the agent is dead is irreversible. Instead of being angry, it's better to think about what to do next. Logan took a deep breath, suppressed the anger in his heart, and said coldly, the information this time is wrong. I will contact Chris first to see what plans he has in the future. Logan walked out of the room just as the door closed. Conrad's silent face instantly turned into anger, and the anger in his heart caused him to crush the beer can in his hand, and the wine scattered on the floor. Logan, I'm glad to receive your call. How is the situation? Has the goods arrived? Chris's brisk voice came from the phone. No. Logan responded in a deep voice, your information is wrong. Those 2 boxes of goods are not in the container at all. Chris on the other end of the phone was stunned, and his original briskness disappeared instantly. How could it be? Are you sure you have searched carefully? Although I'm a little old, I'm not blind yet. Logan was sullen, and Chris' poor intelligence made everyone work in vain all night, and he might also get into trouble with S.H.I.E.L.D. and Captain America, which is not a good thing for him. He asked, what are those 2 boxes of goods? Even S.H.I.E.L.D. was attracted. We had a conflict with them. Conrad even killed a S.H.I.E.L.D. person. Our current situation is very difficult. Danger. Damn it. Upon hearing the news, Chris was furious. This idiot. At the other end of the phone took a deep breath and said again, listen, Logan, that batch of goods is really important. We must get it. Don't come back yet. I'm going to find out the true whereabouts of that batch of goods. You're crazy. Logan growled angrily, this is New York. Maybe they have started to besiege us all over the city. Staying here is tantamount to suicide. After a pause, he added again, if S.H.I.E.L.D. knew that I was Wolverine, the situation would get worse. I know it's dangerous. Chris answered unceremoniously, no one wants to offend S.H.I.E.L.D., but that batch of goods is more important. As long as you help me get that batch of goods, I will reward you up to 100,000. Not even $1 million. Logan decisively refused, no matter how much money I have no life to spend, it will just be a pile of blank paper. Logan, 100,000 is not a small amount. Chris's voice suddenly became extremely dangerous, it's enough to buy your old father a comfortable retirement home. Logan was silent, which was a naked threat. 100,000, not a penny less. In the end, Logan had no choice but to accept it. Now that he is no longer with the professor, it would be easy for Chris to hurt him. Hearing this, Chris laughed again, wise choice, I will go find out the information and wait for my news. After saying that, the phone hung up. Logan looked at the phone, his expression became extremely cold, he clenched his fist and smashed it against the wall. Damn it! Chris, you will soon pay for your actions. Logan took a deep breath. He didn't expect Chris to be so cruel, but it won't be long before the Lawrence family understands the consequences of driving away wolves and devouring sheep. Logan adjusted his attitude and turned to look out the window at the port not far away. There is no place to stay. S.H.I.E.L.D. will find this place soon. We have to change places. Chapter 23 Wolverine, the Devil on the Battlefield. You are listening at novelfull.audio. In the suite, Logan stood by the window, gently opened the curtains, and cautiously looked at the traffic outside. After last night, he always felt that S.H.I.E.L.D. spies were everywhere. Even though they had moved overnight to a hotel more than 10 kilometers away from the New York port, S.H.I.E.L.D. spies were everywhere. Logan is afraid of being targeted by S.H.I.E.L.D., and even more afraid of Hydra. At this stage, S.H.I.E.L.D. has not yet carried out a major purge, and there are still many Hydra members inside. Snake S.H.I.E.L.D. is not called Snake S.H.I.E.L.D. for nothing. Hydra agents have even less bottom lines than S.H.I.E.L.D., not to mention that Hydra has internal anatomy and research on mutants. Now he can only hide himself as much as possible, and even only orders takeout when eating, and never goes out unless necessary. In the suite, Samuel and the three of them gathered around the bed, counting weapons and supplies. Taiwan Novel Network. James, we're running low on ammunition. Joshua looked at the remaining bullets in his backpack, only a few scattered ones. Chris said that the cargo was just antique ceramics, which led them to make a mistake in thinking that the mission would not be too complicated and they did not carry much ammunition at all. Logan thought for a moment and said to Joshua, you and Conrad go out to purchase a batch. Thought it's not enough if you don't have enough ammunition. After all, the three of them except yourself are just ordinary people, but fortunately this is the United States, and ammunition is not difficult to buy. You just need to find a gun store. However, it was not convenient for Logan to travel, so the purchasing task could only be left to Joshua and Conrad. Although it was late at night last night, he was not sure whether Steve and Natasha saw his appearance clearly. How dare he take this risk? Remember, don't draw anyone's attention and hide yourself. Logan told the two people before leaving. Joshua nodded, pulled the obviously reluctant Conrad out of the suite, put on his peaked cap, lowered the brim, and walked carefully on the streets of New York. What happened at the port the night before left them with lingering fears. However, Conrad's face was full of displeasure and he said, no one has dared to ask me to go shopping before. Joshua naturally knew that Conrad was dissatisfied, so he had no choice but to persuade him. Stop complaining. Without James, we have been dismissed after the mission in Nevada. It was an accident that time. Conrad retorted full of resentment. After all, he had walked that road several times, and only that time did the enemy appear. Joshua shrugged, stopped talking, and scanned the neighborhood, looking for the location of the gun store. The streets of New York are very prosperous, with all kinds of shops, including many gun shops. After the two selected one that seemed to be of average size, Joshua went in alone to buy bullets. Conrad wandered aimlessly outside, and finally stopped in front of a garage sale. There are many strange things on display in this stall, all of which are small things with a sense of the times, such as commemorative medals of the founding of the United States, cowboy hats from the cowboy era, etc. Conrad chose a mechanical watch that looked like it was made in the last century. He put it on his hand and saw that it was good and affordable, so he paid for it. While the stall owner was giving him change, he picked up an old comic book on the stall. This comic looks old, the paper is even a little yellowed, and there is a big X written on the cover. What kind of comic is this? I've never heard of it. Conrad flipped through the comics and asked the stall owner at the same time. The stall owner was an old man who looked to be in his 70s. After glancing at the comic cover, he said indifferently, old antiques from the last century were very popular at the time. If you are interested, you can take away $10. A crappy comic costs $10, are you crazy? Conrad felt disgusted and was about to put it down, but suddenly he saw a familiar face in the comic. He stopped putting down his hand and stared at the face carefully. This is a comic about Wolverine. He was quite famous at the time, but now he is an outlaw. The comics about him have long been out of print. Maybe my copy will be the last one. $10 is a bargain. The stall owner spoke with a groan, muttering that Conrad didn't know what he was selling, but at this time, Conrad had no intention of listening to the stall owner's nonsense, and his eyes were fixed on Wolverine in the comics. Although it is a comic, the portraits of the characters are very realistic, and the Wolverine in the painting looks very similar to James. The only difference is that James looks much older. James, Wolverine. Conrad murmured in a low voice, thinking of James' performance. A sinister smile instantly appeared on his face. He slammed the comic book shut. $10, I want it. Unexpectedly, this trip would bring unexpected surprises. James, it seems you are hiding a big secret. At this time, Joshua also happened to walk out of the gun shop, holding a black bag in his hand. Seeing Conrad's spring-like smile, he was obviously taken aback and said, "Did you find the money? You are so happy. I got a big bargain, a good watch." Conrad revealed the mechanical watch on his wrist and shook it as if to show off. "It's just a broken watch." Joshua glanced at it and suddenly lost interest. The two returned to the suite, but Logan was nowhere to be seen. Only Samuel sat boredly in the living room and watched TV. "Where's James?" Conrad secretly touched the comics in his arms, feeling a little unbearable. "In the room." Samuel pointed to the room without looking back. Click. Then he heard the door open and then slam shut. Conrad's sudden action made Josh and Samuel look at each other in bewilderment. Ever since the incident in Texas, Conrad had been like a mouse seeing a cat when he saw Logan, and he couldn't hide from him. What happened today? Facing Samuel's expression, Josh also shook his head in confusion. In the room, Logan was sitting at the table reading a book. Hearing the sound of the door opening, he raised his head unhappily. When he saw that it was Conrad, his face was full of anger. "Don't you knock before coming in?" Conrad ignored Logan, stared at Logan's eyes, smiled, and said, "I saw something very interesting. I think you might be interested too." The wolf's intuition made Logan frown, and he had a bad premonition in his heart, but he still said sternly, "I'm not interested, get out." Conrad laughed and walked to Logan's desk, took out the comics hidden under his jacket, and threw them on the table. Wolverine's comics are said to be a product of the last century. It's strange to say, his face is too similar to yours, just like you when you were young. The eye-catching big X on the cover poked Logan's eyes directly, and his face instantly darkened. Conrad looked at Logan's face, confirmed his guess, pulled out a chair and sat down, stared at Logan's eyes, and smiled as a winner. What's more, the protagonist in the comics has the ability to attack with steel claws that can be extended freely. This reminds me of what happened in Nevada. If I remember correctly, of the 10 bodies in the wooden warehouse, only 1 died of gunshot wounds, and the remaining 9 died of claw-like sharp blades. Logan looked cold, and his cold eyes fell on Conrad. "What do you want to say? Should I call you James, or should I call you Wolverine, Mr. Logan Howlett?" Conrad smiled proudly, and the introduction on the cover of the comics had Wolverine's real name on it. Logan no longer responded, and his eyes gradually became cold, but Conrad was still fearless. "I haven't told this secret yet. If you want me to keep it in my stomach, then you'd better disappear forever after this mission. Otherwise, I believe that many people will want to know Wolverine's address. Guess what you will face at that time: prison. Or laboratory, or zoo." Conrad smiled and slapped the table, stood up, and strode out of the room. However, he did not notice that Logan was staring at his back with murderous intent in his eyes. It seems that someone takes himself too seriously. Logan pursed his lips, but could not help but smile again. Now his strength has not recovered, and he cannot move Lawrence and Donald for the time being, but it is more than enough to kill a mercenary. The number of mercenaries who died in his hands is countless. People may only remember that Wolverine is a superhero, but forget that before that, he was also the battlefield demon with the most dead souls among all superheroes. Chapter 24: Conrad's Death. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The past few days were absolutely tormenting for Samuel. He couldn't even go to the bar downstairs, and he had to stay with several men. He had to endure women knocking on the door every night, and such difficult days finally ushered in a turnaround. 3 days later, Chris finally sent intelligence that the goods of the Juarez family were located in a remote logistics warehouse in the suburbs of New York. The Juarez family might not have thought that the hiding place would be found even if it was so remote, because the logistics warehouse is a bit far away and it takes at least a few hours to drive. Logan asked Josh and others to prepare weapons and equipment and set off in advance before sunset. Samuel and Josh first went to find a reliable truck. As soon as the goods were in hand, they had to leave the city immediately to avoid more trouble. Before the action, Logan told Conrad alone, "This mission is very important, don't mess around." Conrad smiled, stretched out his hand and patted Logan on the shoulder. "Take care of yourself first, Mr. Howlett." Logan looked at Conrad's back and his eyes darkened. A few hours later, it was almost dawn, the moon was high in the sky, and the jungle was silent, with only some unknown nocturnal animals making low sounds from time to time. Samuel was responsible for meeting near the warehouse, while Logan took Josh Conrad to hide in the jungle, looking at several warehouses not far away. All the warehouses were dark, and there was no sign of human activity except for a few security guards who occasionally passed by on patrol. "The goods are in warehouse number 5. Logan pointed to the 5th warehouse. "How do we get in?" Josh stared at warehouse number 5 with a frown. "These warehouses have no windows and use iron doors. Even if they can pick the locks, the noise when opening the door will attract the security guards in the first place." Ventilation duct. Logan looked at the vent on the top of the warehouse and responded softly. In addition to sending him the target address, Chris even sent him the drawings of the warehouse. The map showed that in addition to the front door and the small door at the back, the ventilation duct on the top is also a good choice for entering the warehouse. In order to ensure that the closed warehouse can be ventilated normally, these ventilation ducts are designed to be large enough for an adult to walk through with a bent waist. Logan took advantage of the gap when a team of security guards passed by and quickly ran to the outside of warehouse number 5. They just calculated the time when the security guards passed by. "At least half an hour, those security guards will not pass here again." When he came to the outside of warehouse number 5, Logan took out a hook rope and threw the hook to the top of the warehouse with force. With a strong pull, the hook firmly hooked the stone bricks on the top of the warehouse. Several people easily climbed to the roof of the warehouse with the help of the hook rope and entered the warehouse through the ventilation duct. There was no light in the dark warehouse. Logan used the light of the flashlight to carefully search in the warehouse. Here, after searching for a while, Logan finally found 2 boxes of goods marked BU-26 and BU-27. The iron cargo box was larger than an ordinary briefcase. It was sealed on the outside and locked with 3 locks. The seal had a number written on it. Joshua and Conrad, who were originally searching elsewhere, heard Logan's voice and hurried over to check. After confirming that this was the target, the two couldn't help but smile. In their eyes, this was not a cargo, but a reward for the mission. However, just as they were about to pick up the cargo, a crisp bang suddenly sounded in the darkness. Along with it, there were also dazzling headlights on the top of the warehouse, and the dark warehouse was instantly bright. The sudden strong light made Logan and his men all stretch out their arms to block the light. "Papa papa." A loud applause suddenly came, and the 3 looked in the direction of the applause, only to see more than a dozen figures walking out of the open corridor on the 2nd floor of the warehouse, each holding a submachine gun. The leader was a middle-aged bearded man in his 50s. He stood on the corridor and kept clapping, and laughed. "Lawrence really put a lot of thought into it, and you can find this place." "Damn it," Joshua cursed, "being surrounded in the warehouse is not good." "People from Juarez," Logan frowned, staring at the bearded man. The bearded man looked at them as if he was looking at prey, and said regretfully, "It was a wrong decision for you to work for Lawrence." He waved his hand, his face instantly fierce. "Kill them." As soon as the voice fell, more than a dozen gunmen pulled the trigger almost at the same time. Bang bang bang. The harsh gunshots echoed violently in the warehouse, and bullets like rain shot out from the muzzle of the submachine gun. Logan's pupils shrank suddenly, and he grabbed Conrad and Josh and hid behind the large cargo box. The fierce bullets hit the cargo box, making a crackling sound. Logan felt the opponent's powerful firepower, frowned, and after thinking, he turned to Chow Shire and said, "You take a box of goods and run away later, we will cover you." The gunshots here must have alarmed the guards outside. If they don't leave early, once the guards surround the warehouse, they will never be able to get away. Xiao Shire also understood the current situation and nodded heavily. Logan held the pistol with both hands and whispered, 3, 2, 1. After speaking, he stood up suddenly, raised the pistol and pulled the trigger, bang bang bang. As the bullets sprayed out, the heads of several gunmen were instantly penetrated by bullets. The bearded man was shocked by the superb marksmanship, turned around, and quickly hid behind a pillar. The rest of the gunmen panicked and quickly hid behind the bunkers. Now, use the cargo box as a bunker, run. Logan shouted. Joshua quickly lifted a target cargo, blocked the cargo box in front of him, and ran towards the door with all his strength. In the corridor, the gunmen hiding behind the bunkers also quickly stretched out their guns and shot at Joshua. Fortunately, the cargo box blocked a lot of bullets for him, and Logan's suppression made it difficult for many gunmen to show their heads. Only 3 gunmen with better angles could shoot at him, so he did not cause any harm. Damn it, stop him, that the bearded man hid behind a pillar, looking at Joshua's figure and roaring loudly. The rest of the gunmen heard the words and showed their heads almost at the same time. Some of them fired in the direction of Logan, forcing Logan to retreat behind the cargo box. The other gunmen pointed their guns at Joshua. Just as they were about to shoot Josh, Conrad, who had already crawled to the other side, suddenly raised his body and shouted, "Hey, this way." As he spoke, several bullets hit the gunman accurately. As a mercenary, his shooting skills were naturally not bad. Logan also took the opportunity to counterattack and shot all the gunmen who shot at Josh. The bearded man looked at his men falling one after another, his face turned pale, and he ran out while the firepower was not concentrated on him, and Josh, under strong cover, successfully opened the warehouse door and rushed out quickly holding the cargo box. Fuck, finally dead. Conrad looked at the large number of fallen bodies and breathed a sigh of relief. There are footsteps, the security has arrived. Logan clearly heard a burst of hurried footsteps coming. The front door can't go out, go through the back door. He remembered that there was a small door behind the warehouse to go out. Yeah. Conrad didn't think much and ran towards the back door with the cargo box. But when they got to the back door, they were stunned. The back door is different from the front door. The front door is a mechanical lock, just like the door of a room. It needs a key to open from the outside, and it can be opened from the inside by turning the handle, so Josh can easily open the door and go out, but the back door is an old-fashioned lock. It has been completely locked from the outside and cannot be opened from the inside. Damn, what should I do now? Conrad was completely panicked. The footsteps behind him were getting more and more rapid. The security personnel and gunmen had entered the warehouse and would soon surround it. Logan glanced behind him and suddenly raised his foot and kicked the back door hard, bang. The huge force instantly bent the iron door, and the lock on the outside could not withstand the violent impact and broke instantly. Conrad looked at the open door and looked at the old man in front of him with shock in his eyes, but he also knew that now was not the time to be surprised, so he quickly picked up the goods and rushed out the door. However, the next second, he stopped his steps just as he was about to take them, staring blankly at Logan beside him, or more precisely at the pistol. In Logan's hand, the black muzzle of the gun was pointed at his heart. "You," Conrad panicked, and was about to speak, but Logan pulled the trigger without hesitation, bang. The piercing gunshot sounded, and the impact of the bullet instantly threw him to the ground. He stared at Logan's cold expression, full of disbelief. "Boy, you messed with the wrong person." Logan picked up the box that fell to the ground. Despicable. Conrad fell to the ground, blood oozing out, his face full of anger. He raised the gun in his hand and tried to fight back with the last bit of strength, bang, bang, bang. What awaited him were several ruthless bullets, and blood flowed all over the ground. Conrad died completely with reluctance. Logan looked at Conrad, who was dying, and turned to look at the gunman who was about to catch up. He shot Conrad in the head, and then ran towards the meeting point with the cargo box. At this time, a few lines of words appeared in front of him. You made the right choice and eliminated a potential threat. Prestige plus 10. Awakening new special ability Heat Vision. Chapter 25 The Legacy of the Chitauri. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Special abilities, self-healing factor, thermal vision. Logan looked at the extra column, new abilities, that I didn't expect that after killing Conrad and solving a potential threat, I would unlock a new ability. Thermal vision may seem useless, but it is one of Superman's superpowers. Although his thermal vision at this stage is definitely not as exaggerated as Superman's, having a new ability means an additional means of self-protection. Taiwan Novel networked. Now he can't go far just relying on his self-healing ability and the steel claws on his hands, and he will even be able to awaken more other abilities in the future. Bang! The sound of gunfire from behind interrupted Logan's thoughts, and the whistling bullets almost passed by his ears. Damn it! Logan cursed and strode out of the warehouse area. The gunfire from the gunman behind was so loud that it completely woke up the quiet jungle and startled countless birds. Fortunately, the running gunman's accuracy was really poor, and coupled with Logan's unpredictable escape route, the trajectory was always deviated. James, this way! Suddenly, a bright light came in, and the roar of the truck at full speed came, accompanied by Samuel's waving shouts. Logan got into the car with a few big steps and quickly closed the door. The bullets behind him whizzed in and hit the door with a clang. Even the car windows were hit by bullets, but fortunately, the special bulletproof glass did not shatter, but left a layer of dense cracks like a spider web. Samuel quickly stepped on the accelerator, and the truck roared out, quickly throwing away the large number of gunmen behind him. Hurry up and get out of the city. Logan sat in the co-pilot and panted heavily, turning his head to urge Samuel. It is late at night, and the traffic is light. It is the best time to leave the city. If it is delayed until dawn, the cars of those office workers will block all the main roads. At that time, both the Juarez family and S.H.I.E.L.D. can easily catch up with them. But Conrad hasn't got in the car yet. Samuel noticed that Conrad did not get in the car with Logan. Logan sighed and said, the people of the Juarez family have killed him. What? Samuel's face was full of surprise, and then turned into anger. Damn it! He and Conrad have performed many dangerous missions. Although that guy has a bad temper, he is also a teammate who has been through life and death. Hearing the news of his death, Samuel's heart was unconsciously angry. Josh in the back seat also frowned, but he was relatively calm. He said in a deep voice, okay, let's get out of the city first. The goods are important. We can talk about revenge later. Samuel nodded and ran towards the New York border at full speed. Not long after Logan and his group left, a series of black SUVs roared in and surrounded the logistics warehouse in Juarez in an instant. A group of fully armed agents ran down from the car and searched all the warehouses in all directions. In just a few minutes, they completely captured the people of the Juarez family. My God, is there a terrorist incident here? In the warehouse, Steve and Rumlow looked at the bodies scattered all over the ground in astonishment. Although shooting incidents in the United States are no longer a new thing, there are rarely such large-scale scenes. It seems that they should have provoked a strong opponent. Rumlow looked at the bodies on the ground. Most of them were shot in the head accurately, or shot through the heart. The opponent's shooting skills were very superb. Steve frowned and walked down the corridor to the middle of the warehouse. A group of armed agents raised their guns and formed a circle. Inside, all the people of the Juarez family were disarmed and squatted on the ground with their heads in their arms. Have they all been caught? Steve asked Natasha, who was carrying out the arrest operation. Natasha nodded. Everyone in the warehouse is here. According to them, a group of people just robbed here. Steve glanced at several people and said sternly, who is the person in charge here? The bearded man raised his head tremblingly, his eyes dodging, not daring to look at Steve. Where are the 2 boxes of BU-26 and BU-27? Steve asked. Just robbed. The bearded man pointed to the corpses in the corridor above. They also killed a lot of us. Damn it. Steve's face sank. If we were a step late, Fury's intelligence department could all go on vacation. It takes 3 days to check a warehouse, and the efficiency is not even as good as a group of robbers. These guys have so many people and weapons, but they can't stop a few people. Rumlow on the side said with a cold face, hurry up and arrange people to guard the entrances and exits of New York. The batch of goods cannot flow out. Natasha shook her head helplessly and said, "It's too late. This is a suburb. With such a long time, they may have left the city long ago. The delay in intelligence is Nick Fury's business. Let him deal with the troubles later." Natasha said, taking out a hard drive and said, "This is the surveillance video around the warehouse. How do I use it?" Steve took the hard drive and looked at it again and again with embarrassment. "There is a computer in the car, go to the car to watch it." Natasha saw the embarrassment on Steve's face, took the hard drive and took the two of them into the car. These surveillance cameras are located around the warehouse, but because it was too dark, the images captured were very blurry. It's not very clear, so it may need to be processed by the technical department. Natasha stared at the surveillance screen, frowning, but judging from the number of people and their general appearance, they should be the people from the port. Steve nodded, staring at the blurred face that looked old in the screen, lost in thought. At the same time, Logan and his friends were driving on the highway outside New York City, quickly returning to Texas. Chris had already arranged all the checkpoints on their way, and the trucks were unimpeded along the way. The highway was silent late at night, and Logan's truck was traveling alone in the endless darkness. Poor Conrad. Samuel drove the car and sighed regretfully. Although he had a bad temper, I didn't expect this guy to die like this, and there was not even a body to be buried. Logan turned his head to look at Samuel, and it could be seen that his regret was indeed sincere. "Does he have a family?" Logan asked. "As far as I know, no, I have never seen him talk to his family on the phone or send messages." Samuel sighed again. Logan stopped talking and sighed helplessly. Although Conrad's death was caused by him, he had to show some regret now, because he saw Josh in the back seat staring at him through the rearview mirror. This guy might have doubted himself in his heart. After a few minutes of silence, Logan suddenly said, "The money for this mission will be used as his funeral expenses. Find a pastor for him." Samuel nodded silently, no words along the way. The three of them took turns driving, almost without any rest, and finally returned to San Antonio in the afternoon of the second day. Back to the logistics warehouse of the Lawrence family, Chris, who learned the news, was waiting at the door of the warehouse, looking forward to Logan and others moving the cargo box out of the car. "Is it all here?" Chris knocked on the cargo box excitedly and waved to Logan. "Open it." Logan used a crowbar to pry open the three locks outside the alley, opened the cargo box shell, and inside was a silver-white iron box wrapped in film. He tore off the film, opened the buckle of the box, and opened the box. The things inside made him stunned. A broken laser gun that was completely incompatible with the luxurious silver-white box, with many obvious gaps on the gun body, as if it had just experienced a war. Not bad. Chris did not feel strange because of the damage to the laser gun. Instead, his eyes were shining with praise, and he couldn't help but reach out to pick up the gun. The heavy laser gun made him use both hands to lift it up and stroke the gun. At the same time, he noticed that Logan's eyes were always focused on the gun body, which made the originally excited Chris show a little displeasure. "Okay, the mission is completed, everyone retreat, the money will be transferred to your account later." "Yeah." Logan nodded, but his frown could not be opened for a long time. He recognized the gun. It was a weapon left by the Chitauri in the New York War. Although it was a little worn, the functions should have been retained. This is a product that far exceeds the technology of Earth, and its power is probably stronger than any firearm on Earth. Only then did Logan understand why Shield and Steve appeared at the port to compete with them for this batch of goods. Obviously, they did not want to see this batch of goods spread out. It seems that the Lawrence family can't stay. On the way back, Logan was a little uneasy. Now it seems that the ambition of the Lawrence family is greater than he thought. He has to get out as soon as possible, otherwise he may be involved in an unnecessary war. Thinking about it, Logan suddenly became energetic. That's right, thermal vision. He thought of his new ability. He had been on the road before, and he didn't have time to study it in depth. Now it seems that the special reward mentioned when the new ability was awakened before is to let him gain new abilities. In an instant, the worry on Logan's face eased a little. For him, it is undoubtedly a great thing. After all, the self-healing factor and steel claws are not enough for him to support the entire tribe. Chapter 26 Infinite Evolution, Gradually Recovering Self-Healing Factor. You are listening at novelfull.audio.
Endurance, 6, Strength, 7, Agility, 7. I hope readers will remember our domain name Taiwan Novel Network. Speed, 7, Intelligence, 5, Defense, 7, Willpower, 10, Fighting Skills, 7, Prestige, 10, Special Attributes, none, Special Abilities, Self-Healing Factor, Thermal Vision, Current Physical Condition, Gradually Stable, Poor Condition. Free Points, 3, Enhancement Points, 1. Back in the room of the abandoned factory, Logan looked at the panel in silence. Killing Conrad, a potential threat, in addition to gaining new abilities, also increased the free points by 3 and the enhancement points by 1. Logan looked at the data on the panel and was not in a hurry to use his own points. The current situation is no longer calm, and God knows what kind of situation he will encounter one day. Keep these free points, and when the critical moment comes, choose to use them in areas that need strengthening. In addition to these points, Logan also noticed the column of current physical condition. His physical condition was gradually declining before, and his condition was poor. Although his current condition is still poor, the decline seems to have improved and gradually stabilized. After the self-healing factor is strengthened, it subtly makes up for the loss of his body for many years, allowing his body functions to gradually recover, but it has not yet completely offset the damage caused by the adamantium alloy. It seems that the enhancement of self-healing ability has an effect. Logan breathed a long sigh of relief. For him now, self-healing ability is the most important. Without self-healing ability, he is simply unable to withstand any serious injuries, and he can't make his old body young again. Only by completely restoring his self-healing ability can he avoid the threat of death. Thinking of this, Logan added all the enhancement points to the self-healing factor without hesitation. He must restore all the self-healing factors as soon as possible and get rid of this weak and old body. After adding the points, Logan looked at the new ability curiously. Heat Vision. High-temperature energy heat vision sounds ordinary, but you have to know that it can easily penetrate any material. In the Silver Age Superman, he can even use heat vision to easily penetrate a planet. Thinking of this, Logan couldn't help but look forward to it. He didn't expect his heat vision to be as powerful as the Silver Age Superman, but he also hoped that it wouldn't be too weak. Thinking of this, Logan held his breath and focused his attention, staring at a point on the table. Buzz! A violent energy suddenly gathered in his eyes, and there was a faint fire in the depths of his eyes. As Logan deepened his attention, the fire gradually turned red, and the dark pupils seemed to be burning with raging flames, and the high temperature permeated, and the hot temperature made the whole room extremely dull. Boom! Suddenly, 2 hot red beams burst out from his eyes, like 2 lasers. Bang! The beam instantly penetrated the tabletop. The long steel table was like tofu and had no resistance. A coin-sized hole was left on the tabletop. The surrounding steel was red, as if it had been burned by red flames. The huge impact force made the entire table tremble continuously, and the wall was shaking. The wall, which was not strong to begin with, fell off a large piece, and a lot of dust was scattered. "Logan, what are you doing?" Caliban next door shouted impatiently. "I was just about to fall asleep." "It's okay." Logan responded loudly, "I just accidentally hit the table." After saying that, Logan's eyes returned to the hole on the tabletop again, and his face was full of excitement. He stretched out his finger and touched the hole curiously. However, as soon as his hand touched the hole, it was instantly bounced off by the intense high temperature, leaving a very clear burn mark on his finger. Logan looked at the burn mark on his fingertips, not only without any anger, but full of excitement. It may not be as good as Scott's Cyclops now, but it's enough. Logan touched the hot corners of his eyes, and Scott came to his mind. If that guy was here, he would be shocked. But he didn't use the full power of thermal vision just now. The thermal vision is mainly high-temperature energy rays. According to the setting of Silver Superman, the highest temperature it can explode is even comparable to the high temperature generated by the Big Bang. That is the highest temperature ever seen in the universe. Compared with it, the temperature of the sun is as small as a candle, and thermal vision can be controlled by the mind, and the user can adjust the intensity and direction of thermal vision at will. Of course, Logan's thermal vision is not so terrifying now. Thermal vision, enhanced.
the three words enhanced indicate that his current thermal vision is only the most basic form. This newly awakened ability, like the self-healing factor, can be continuously strengthened through strengthening. But it is not clear whether there is an upper limit. And the way to strengthen is the same as the self-healing factor, both require the use of enhancement points. If he could completely strengthen his thermal vision, then perhaps he could really unleash a terrifying power comparable to that of Super Silver. However, Logan also knew that if he wanted to strengthen his thermal vision to its final form, the number of enhancement points required would probably be an astronomical figure. At this stage, it is a bit far away for him, and the prestige he has gained in the past few days is also very little. Logan took a deep breath and suppressed the excitement in his heart. After this incident, he also figured out the way to obtain new abilities. He only needs to get a certain amount of prestige to trigger the awakening of new abilities. In other words, as long as the prestige is enough, the abilities will be more. It seems that we have to find a way to get more prestige. A light flashed in Logan's eyes, and his idea of rebuilding mutants was stronger than ever. After all, it was explained before that the prestige obtained from mutants is twice that of ordinary people. Only in the tribe can he gain more prestige faster. While thinking in his mind, Logan suddenly noticed the burn marks on his fingertips, which had begun to recover unknowingly. Although it was not completely recovered, a thick layer of scab formed. You must know that this is a burn. Generally, burns will first blister and then gradually scab, but now, only a few minutes have passed, and the burn wound has formed a scab. As he stroked the scab on his fingertips, Logan's mouth curled up. This showed that his self-healing ability had recovered to some extent. Although it was not as fast as the recovery speed in his heyday, Logan had never thought that the self-healing factor would be restored before. This was a good start. As long as he was given enough time, the self-healing factor would be able to completely recover to its peak state, even beyond the peak state. Because the enhancement was unlimited, it meant that as long as he had time, he could enhance it infinitely. Chapter 27 Gabriela's Concerns. He is just an Uber driver. You are listening at novelfull.audio. In the factory area beside the railway tracks, the iron wall leaked cracks, and the dust and sand that passed by from time to time swept outside the iron wall, making a tinkling sound. The old electric fan in the living room squeaked non-stop. Logan sat in front of the table, measuring the hole in the iron table and trying to repair it with the wood on the table. Logan, how did you break it? Caliban squatted down and watched Logan's movements, and couldn't help asking, also, how did you do this? The thickness of the iron table is not small. To make such a hole, at least a large caliber rifle is needed to shoot it. Of course, Logan's steel claws are also capable of punching through the table, but the shape of the hole is a regular circle, not a claw mark, which is obviously not the masterpiece of the steel claws. Logan hesitated a little, considering whether to tell Caliban about his new ability. It seems that Logan has something to say to us. Charles Xavier, who was watching TV, noticed Logan's hesitation and pushed the wheelchair over with interest. Logan looked at the professor hesitantly. Before he could speak, Caliban on the side shouted excitedly, "Great, Logan, are you finally going to leave this damn place?" Caliban wanted to leave this damn place even in his dreams. Not to mention that the high-temperature environment of the desert with long-term ultraviolet rays made him suffer. More importantly, he thought he still had value and the remaining decades of his life could not be wasted here. No. Logan shook his head decisively. He wanted to leave, but now was not the time. That's so disappointing. Caliban felt lost and sat down on the chair helplessly, playing with the wooden block that Logan used to repair the table. Logan ignored the lost Caliban, pondered for a moment and finally said, "I have awakened a new ability." He decided to tell the professor and Caliban that he had awakened his thermal vision. Although the awakening of thermal vision should not be revealed to others, after all, it is a killer move that can turn the tide of the battle in a critical moment. But in the past few years, Logan and Professor Caliban have been dependent on each other, like close relatives. No one in the world is more trustworthy than them. What? The professor and Caliban were stunned at first, staring at Logan. This is impossible, Logan. You are 200 years old, and you are long past the age of awakening your abilities. Caliban looked Logan up and down, shook his head and said, "I used to be a black market merchant and saw many mutants, but I have never seen anyone in a nursing home awaken mutant abilities. Logan didn't speak, his eyes gradually became hot and his pupils radiated red. The next second, a blazing beam of light flashed out, and the stuffy room was instantly covered with high temperature. Bang! The beam easily penetrated the table, and an identical small hole appeared next to the hole that had not been repaired. Snap! The wood that Caliban was playing with fell to the ground with a clang, and his pale face was full of disbelief, staring at the newly added hole on the table in amazement. He opened his mouth wide and said, "Scott Cyclops." "No, Cyclops are not like this, Logan. What is your ability?" "Heat vision." Logan responded truthfully, relying on the eyes to emit high-temperature lasers. "If you use it with all your strength, it will be stronger than it is now." "Oh my God." Caliban touched his bald forehead, looked at the professor beside him and asked, "Professor, is this normal?" Charles stared at the hole on the table, and said in silence for a while, "Theoretically, it is possible, but, this is the first time I have seen it. I also think it is a pleasant surprise." Logan knew that no one in the world knew the X gene better than the professor, and his life revolved around the X gene. However, the professor has studied the X gene for many years, and has seen countless mutants and many various cases at Xavier World Academy, but there has never been any case like Logan, who can awaken new abilities at the age of 200. Most mutants awaken their mutant abilities when they are teenagers or young adults. The younger they are, the higher the chance of awakening. As they age, the chance of awakening decreases year by year. However, Logan is the only one who awakens new abilities in old age. "I just awakened recently, and I have only used it twice so far." Logan told the two truthfully. Charles looked at Logan and fell into deep thought for a long time before speaking again. "Maybe your mentality has changed recently, stimulating the potential in your body, so you awakened this new ability." Logan was a little confused before, and even had the idea of committing suicide more than once. Charles knew that he always carried an adamantium bullet that could end his life, but in the last conversation in the water tower, Charles noticed the change in Logan's thoughts. He even proposed the idea of looking for a gathering place for mutants, which shows that his mentality is changing, and the abilities of mutants are mostly related to emotions. Emotions stimulate the potential in genes, thereby inducing the awakening of mutant abilities. It is very likely that after Logan's mentality changed, his emotions also changed, so he has the new ability now. Although this idea is a bit far-fetched, Charles feels that this is the only reasonable explanation for Logan's awakening of new abilities. "By the way, you haven't told anyone about this." Charles stared at Logan seriously. "No." Logan shook his head. "You are the only two people who know about my awakening of new abilities." "That's good." Charles breathed a sigh of relief, and then said with a serious expression, "This matter must not be known to outsiders." As he spoke, he turned to look at Caliban. Caliban nodded in understanding. Logan also asked the professor to relax. "Don't worry, I will hide it well." He was still able to awaken new abilities at the age of 200. If word spread about this, it would definitely make the biologists in white coats in the laboratory go crazy. At that time, countless forces will immediately surround this broken factory area, and even a drop of his blood will be frantically studied by the group of biologists like a treasure. Ding dong. The cell phone beside the table suddenly buzzed with a message alert. An unread text message appears on the screen. "Nurse, when can we see you?" This was Gabriela, and Logan gave her a codename just in case. Logan picked up the phone and replied, "In a few days, now is not the time." After sending the text message, Logan turned off the screen and his expression gradually became serious. After helping Chris complete 2 tasks, he had enough money to leave Santa Fe City. Perhaps, it's time to think about how to get rid of the Lawrence family and Donald. At the same time, in a very shabby cheap hotel. Logan, in a few days, now is not the time. Gabriela looked at the text message on the screen and anxiously grabbed the phone with both hands. She has been staying in this hotel for several days. She has to be wary of the strange faces around her every day. Her mind is always in a state of tension. She even dares not sleep too much. This kind of life makes her look exhausted. At this time, a red ball rolled to his feet, and then a young white hand stretched out and picked up the red ball. The girl squatted on the ground and raised her head. holding a comic in her other hand. The cover showed Wolverine taking several children in a paradise. She stood up and pointed to the comic. "When will we go to the Garden of Eden?" Gabriela tried her best to put some tenderness on her exhausted face, and reached out to touch the girl's hair. "You have to wait a few more days, and Wolverine will take you there by then." "That hero?" Laura touched Wolverine in the comics. In the picture, Wolverine is standing on a boulder, wearing a classic yellow suit. His eyes are full of bravery without fear of danger, and sharp claws extend from the clenched fists, scattering metal. The silver shines brightly, and the majestic body is like a warrior who dares to fight against everything. Gabriela smiled and nodded, but her eyes gradually dimmed. "That hero? Maybe it was once." She wasn't sure whether the current Wolverine still had the same bloodiness as before. It had been a full week since she came here and contacted Wolverine, but he still refused to meet, and even the content of the text message reply was more like a malicious tease. This forced her to think carefully about whether Wolverine was really reliable. Maybe he was not as great as the comic said, and during this period, she also found out from other Uber drivers that James was now a heavy drinker, and his violent temper even made it difficult for him to make a friend with whom he could drink. Perhaps, the former Wolverine has grown old, now he is just an Uber driver with no hope in life. Maybe his request for help was just for fun while he was drunk. Chapter 28, Emergency, Donald the Financial Boss. You are listening at novelfull.audio. More than 110,000. Logan checked his bill balance on his phone. During this period of time, he has done two things for the Lawrence family. Although the Lawrence family has a bad reputation outside, they have never been vague about paying. Not long after returning home yesterday, the mission reward of 100,000 arrived. Adding the first reward, excluding the recent expenses, there are more than 110,000 left in the card. Google search TWKAN. This money is enough for him to take the professor and Caliban away from Santa Fe City, and even maintain a relatively good living condition during the escape. Putting down the phone, Logan sat on the sofa and began to think about getting rid of the Lawrence family. After the last direct conflict with S.H.I.E.L.D., Logan believed that with the ability of S.H.I.E.L.D., it might have locked the Lawrence family as the culprit of the robbery of the laser gun. In the near future, S.H.I.E.L.D. may even send agents to Santa Fe City to search for detailed information about the Lawrence family. In addition, Donald, who also stayed in Santa Fe, was also a force that could not be underestimated. This small Santa Fe City might usher in a big scene of a three-way fight. Before this happened, he had to find a way to leave quickly. He didn't want to be involved in this storm, and if he wanted to leave, the most important thing was to withdraw all the money in the bank card. After all, once the escape life officially started, the bank card would definitely not be used anymore. Otherwise anyone could easily lock his location by checking the flow address of his bank card. Before that, there were two thorny problems in front of Logan: how to get rid of the Lawrence family. The second was how to help Laura get rid of Donald's pursuit. The former was relatively easy. Although the Lawrence family's power in Santa Fe was extremely large, it was limited to Santa Fe. Once Logan and his team left Texas, the influence of the Lawrence family would become very limited. As long as he acted quickly enough, before the Lawrence family could react, he could take the professor and Caliban out of Texas, and the risk factor would be much lower. As for the latter, that is the real trouble. Donald attaches great importance to Laura, and they have the support of the government. As long as Laura's location is found, he can mobilize heavy troops no matter which state she is in. This is a big trouble. Logan lay on the sofa, looking at the dilapidated ceiling and thinking. Of course, he can also choose to give up Laura. Now Donald's eyes are on Laura. As long as he doesn't take action and lets him catch Laura, there will naturally be no trouble later, but this is obviously impossible. First, Laura has his genes and is considered his flesh and blood. Second, Laura knows many new generation mutants. He wants to organize a mutant group and gain more prestige in the tribe, so these new generation mutants will inevitably join. And this also indicates that he and Donald will fall into a situation of life and death. Ding ding ding. Just when Logan didn't know what to do, the phone rang with a rapid incoming call reminder, completely interrupting his thoughts. Hello. Logan answered the phone. Logan, do you have time? There is a new task. Let's meet at the logistics warehouse. Chris' voice came from the other end of the phone. Logan's body shuddered, and he sat on the sofa with a frown. I just rested for half a day. No way. Chris said with a smile, you also know that the opportunity to make money is fleeting. Okay. Logan was a little helpless, but he had to accept it. Now he was not ready to completely tear his face with the Lawrence family. He asked helplessly, what task? You go to the logistics warehouse first, Samuel and the others are also rushing there, and there will be arrangements when you get there. After speaking, Chris hung up the phone. Logan looked at the phone, sighed helplessly, and got up to go to the logistics warehouse of the Lawrence family. At the door of the warehouse, Logan did not see Chris, but saw Joshua and Samuel. There was a black man in charge of reception next to them, and 2 trucks with the Lawrence family logo. James, this way. Samuel waved to Logan. Logan came in front of him, glanced at the black man, and then whispered to Samuel, what mission? So anxious. I don't know. Samuel shrugged. Josh and I had just allocated Conrad's salary when we received a call and rushed over. Chris didn't ask too much about Conrad's death, but the remuneration he should give did not stop because of his death. Logan didn't ask much, but Samuel counted on his fingers and said to himself, we used part of the money to hold a prayer meeting for him, and invited a priest to complete the ceremony in front of his clothes. The rest was donated to the welfare organization, which was considered to be a good deed for this bad guy. I hope he can suffer less torture in hell. Logan didn't care about the whereabouts of the money, and even Samuel and his friends used it for gambling. He still cared about this mission. Are we still the 3 of us on this mission? Logan turned his head to look at the black man next to him. The other party was wearing a decent suit and was only responsible for reception. Obviously, he would not participate in the mission personally. Of course not. The one who responded to Logan was not Samuel, but a voice that Logan did not want to hear. And me, James. Logan frowned and looked over, only to see Donald walking towards them with a smile outside the warehouse door. At this time, the black man beside him also said, Mr. Chris has ordered that Mr. Donald will also participate in this mission. Logan stared at Donald, who was walking briskly. He knew that this guy must have no good intentions, so he turned his head to the black man and said, can I refuse? Chris always arranges some dangerous tasks, and I'm worried that this guy will drag us down. No. The black man shook his head decisively and explained, this mission is fully funded by Mr. Donald, and you need to cooperate with any of his actions. Logan understood that Donald was the sponsor of this mission. At this time, Donald also walked up to Logan and smiled, hey, James, don't underestimate me, my strength is also good. Logan glanced at him, had to nod his head in agreement, and then followed Samuel to the first truck, opened the door and sat down. However, before Samuel started the truck, Donald came up and pulled Samuel down, saying, hey, man, you have to take the one at the back. After that, he sat in the driver's seat. Samuel had no choice. After all, the other party was the sponsor, so he had to get on the truck at the back. What do you want to do? Logan looked at Donald, who started the truck, frowning. Don't be nervous, just taking something that should belong to us. It's legal and compliant. Donald showed a harmless smile, stuck his head out of the window, patted the door, and shouted to the back, you two, let's go. Chapter 29. Aren't mutants just animals? You are listening at novelfull.audio. The truck drove along the road between the rice fields, and the golden wheat ears were filled with the fragrance of rice. The warm afternoon breeze blew and spread the fragrance. Search TWKAN on Google. In the past, Logan liked the comfort of noon the most. If there was nothing important, he would slow down the car, open the window, and let the warm wind pass by, filling the car with fragrance, but now he had nothing on his mind. He looked at Donald driving the truck next to him with wary eyes. What on earth do you want to do? Logan, calm down, I'm just going to get something. Donald glanced at Logan, with a brisk look on his face, and suddenly asked, you haven't contacted Gabriela, have you? Logan noticed Donald's gaze looking over and said coldly, oh, your people have been staring at you, do I dare? Since Donald is cooperating with the Lawrence family, Logan believes that his address may have already been grasped by him. Maybe now, there are still many pairs of eyes watching around the abandoned factory. Better not lie. Donald smiled again and lowered his head to look at Logan's hands curiously. can you still stretch out your claws? Whoops. Logan suddenly raised his hand, and the steel claws between his finger bones suddenly popped out. The silver-white steel claws reflected a dazzling cold light in the sun, but, only half of it. Donald looked at the half-steel claw and then looked at Logan's expression. He could see that this was already the limit of Logan's strength, and the steel claws could no longer stretch and retract as freely as they did when he was young. Looking at this scene, Donald suddenly laughed and said, "When you reach middle age, you will inevitably feel a little powerless, right? That if it were the young Logan. Not many people would be willing to mess with him, and no one would want to be an enemy of a guy like that who would never die." As for now, Donald looked at the steel claw and let out a light chuckle. Just a dying old guy. Donald stopped talking, retracted his gaze, continued to look at the road ahead, and even hummed a light song. Logan smiled helplessly and said nothing. He retracted his claws and turned to look at the rice fields passing by outside the car window. Their destination this time was Florida. Like Santa Fe, it was located in the southern United States. The weather was similar to San Antonio. It didn't look like autumn at all, and there was a dull heat in the air. When we arrived at our destination, it was already the morning of the next day. This is a small town in Yenbian, Florida. The town is surrounded by dense trees, and the roads are lined with green woods. The traffic in the town is very bad, and most of them are dirt roads with potholes. Such roads are definitely a challenge for the shock absorbers of the trucks, and also for the people in the cars. The bumps along the way make them feel like their bodies are about to fall apart. It's time to change cars. Donald stepped out of the truck and said to Samuel and Josh L. who were following behind him, "The road ahead is difficult for trucks to pass. There is a rental point for off-road motorcycles nearby." Samuel kept rubbing his feet against a stone, trying to wipe off the yellow mud stuck to the soles of his shoes, and couldn't help but complain, "Is this place a primitive tribe? There is not even a cement road. Boy, I advise you to shut up." Donald patted Samuel on the back and reminded, "This is the territory of rednecks." Logan scanned the surroundings vigilantly. There was only a potholed dirt road with dense jungle on both sides. "Let's go and get going early while it's daylight." Logan looked at the sky. He didn't want to camp out in this unfamiliar place. It seems James can't wait any longer. Donald squinted his eyes and looked at the long dirt road, smiling expectantly. "I can't wait to see those goods." Logan suddenly frowned. Donald's expression gave him a bad feeling. Led by Donald, several people found a rental shop full of mountain motorcycles at the corner of the road ahead, and rented 4 mountain motorcycles at relatively expensive prices. Then, the roar of motorcycles rang through the woods. There were no signs here, but Donald was obviously very familiar with this area. He twisted the accelerator, let the motorcycle engine roar, and moved quickly through the woods. The 3 of them had to speed up and weave through the trees. After nearly half an hour, Donald slowed down and finally stopped in front of a clearing deep in the woods. There is a large closed house standing in the open space. Apart from the front door, this house has no entrances or exits. Even the windows on the house are sealed floor-to-ceiling windows. Logan squinted at the house. He could see that the house was not designed to be lived in, but a secret laboratory hidden deep in the jungle. However, it seems that it has stopped functioning. All the outer walls have fallen off. Thick grass almost surrounds the entire laboratory. Some plants that need to be climbed are climbing up along the laboratory, occupying almost an entire wall. There was no sound at all, and there wasn't even an extra human figure around. What fool builds his house in such a horrible place? Is there anything wrong with his brain? Samuel looked at the laboratory and complained again. The rush all the way made him feel a little irritable. However, Joshua saw that this laboratory was definitely unusual. He reached out and poked Samuel's back, and reminded him in a low voice, "Say less." Logan turned to look at Donald, his brows furrowed. "What exactly do you want us to bring?" This place is not simple at first glance. Although it is dilapidated, there may still be many secrets inside. Donald laughed. "You will know when you go in." After that, he strode towards the door of the laboratory. After the baptism of wind and rain, the door was covered with rust, and the lock on the door was almost a decoration. Bang! Donald suddenly kicked the big iron door open with a fierce kick, the door lock broke with a sound, and the rusty door frame fell straight back, raising dust. "Follow me." Donald waved his hand to signal several people to follow, and strode into the laboratory. The silent and dim laboratory was filled with a rotten smell, and the ground was covered with a thick layer of dust. There were sealed rooms on both sides, and it was impossible to see what was hidden inside. Donald seemed to be very familiar with this place. Even though the environment was very dim, he still led Logan and others to a room with ease. The iron door outside the room was also overturned by his foot. Inside were sealed iron cages made of steel sheets. Logan looked at the cages with a frown. So many cages. Samuel approached an iron cage and took a closer look. The thick iron cage looked like a bank safe. What animals are these cages used to hold? He turned his head and asked Donald curiously. Animals. Donald squinted at Logan, then suddenly grinned, stretched out his hand and pressed the switch next to him. Boom. The lights were instantly powered on, and a dazzling light illuminated the entire room. The walls of the room were covered with photos of various people, each of them in different shapes. Some were no different from normal people, while others retained some animal characteristics. The experiment numbers were noted next to the photos: number 7, number 19, number 21. Donald looked at the photos, squinted his eyes and murmured, "Aren't mutants animals?" Chapter 30, Replicas in the Laboratory. You are listening at novelfull.audio. With rows of neatly arranged cages and various experimental data hanging on the walls, Logan could even imagine the wailing of his fellow humans in the cages before they died when this place was still in operation. In this laboratory, mutants are just a group of animals that are not much different from pigs, cows, dogs, and sheep. Logan's fists clenched unconsciously. He didn't expect that the goods Donald mentioned would be mutant experimental samples. Mutants are truly complex creatures. Samuel bent down and stared carefully at a cage. Through the gap in the cage, he could see that the cage was empty. He turned back and asked Donald, "But, isn't it a crime to carry out experimental transformation of human beings?" From the information on the wall, he could tell that various experiments had been conducted on mutants here, but he had no feelings for mutants, humans living in a new era. These three words, mutants. They sound more like mysterious creatures from the last century. In addition, the government deliberately erases information about mutants in an attempt to make the world forget the fact that they once saved the world. Therefore, young people like Samuel know very little about mutants and are psychologically indifferent. If you hate it, you won't care, so they were far less shocked than Logan was about using mutants to study this matter. It's legal. Donald spoke with a smile, and at the same time glanced at Logan's gloomy face, his eyes filled with amusement. Okay, where is the goods? Get them and leave as soon as possible. I don't want to spend the night here. Maybe there will be ghosts of mutants at night, Xiaoxir asked. The surrounding environment made him feel a little creepy. He could guess that countless mutants must have been killed here, and judging from the photos on the wall, there seemed to be some small mutants among them. Follow me. Donald smiled, walked to a wall, stretched out his hand and knocked on the wall. The hollow echo showed that there was a hole behind the wall. He used both hands to open the wall and create a deep passage. Dust continued to scatter, and a rotten smell spread from inside. Generally, the experimental subjects or samples outside are just for children, and they are not worth much at all. Bringing them back is not even enough to cover the travel expenses. Donald smiled and pointed to the passage. The highlight is at the very end. What do you mean? Samuel looked at the passage with a puzzled look on his face. Logan remained silent. He knew that Donald was deliberately mocking the cheapness of mutants. The value of some mutants was not even as much as the cost of gas. He also secretly said that mutants are just a group of things that can be measured by price and are not worthy of being compared with humans. Logan knew that this was Donald's nature. He loved poking people where they hurt and making them look ugly, and he took pleasure in doing so. Several people walked through the narrow passage and came to a more secretive laboratory. Donald turned on the light, and the dim laboratory was instantly illuminated by strong light. What came into view were 24 iron boxes. In 22 of them, through the gaps, people could be vaguely seen lying inside. Corpse. Samuel lowered his head and looked carefully at a gap, and suddenly jumped up in fright. He was not afraid of dead people, but these shocking rows of mutant corpses really made him feel a little frightened. It really feels like déjà vu in Resident Evil. Don't be afraid. Donald walked towards the depths and said with a smile, they can no longer threaten us. After speaking, he pointed to the few iron boxes at the back and said, the first few are not important, the last ones are the highlight. This first one only had the characteristics of a mutant. He was covered in wolf hair, but he didn't have any superpowers. He was a failed experiment and was executed. Donald smiled and patted the first iron box, then pointed to the second one. The second one made a little progress and restored the mutant's abilities, but it's a pity that his cells divided too fast, and his organs were destroyed alive. Worn out. This is the third one. Donald walked to the third iron box and said with regret, he almost succeeded and reproduced all the abilities of mutants. Unfortunately, his willpower was too weak and he couldn't bear the metal poured into him, so he died in the experiment. On stage. Samuel and Josh frowned unconsciously, and Donald spoke of death too easily. This is too cruel. Samuel couldn't help but raise doubts. These methods of death were a bit difficult for normal people to accept, and judging from the appearance of these corpses, they seemed to be young. Donald smiled, shook his head and said, there is no need to feel bad about the death of the mice. They are just experimental subjects. The only purpose of their birth is to allow us to record data. So, the experiment was successful and this place was abandoned? Xiao Shi couldn't help but ask. Donald thought for a moment and smiled, pretty much, we are now at the borderline between success and failure. What do you mean? Samuel asked confused. Donald came to the last two boxes. You should also notice that two boxes here are empty. What's the meaning? Samuel ran to the empty box and asked curiously, they succeeded, so they were not executed. Yes. Donald pointed to the empty box numbered X-24, there's nothing wrong with it except that it's weak. What about X-23? Samuel looked at another empty box next to him. She ran away. Donald shook his head with regret, she is the most successful one. She has copied all the advantages of that mutant, and is even stronger than that mutant in some aspects. After speaking, he suddenly raised his head and continued to smile, I am looking for her now. It is said that she is in Santa Fe City. If anyone among you can help me find her, I will reward you handsomely. You have consumed more than 20 experimental subjects. Josh looked back at the rows of boxes behind him and couldn't help asking, who do you want to copy? After the introduction, he could see that the ultimate goal of these experimental subjects seemed to be to copy the ability of a mutant. For this goal, they did not hesitate to kill more than 20 people, and obviously, there may be only 2 who succeeded, or even only 1. How special is the object of the copy that will make the laboratory pay so much? Who? Donald suddenly smiled, took out a very old-looking blueprint from under an iron box, and gently unfolded it and spread it on the box. The top of the paper read Conceptual Anatomy of Wolverine. Below was the anatomical information of a human figure with steel claws, and each organ was marked next to it. Josh put his head over the paper and murmured the name on it, Wolverine. When this name entered his ears, Logan's face suddenly darkened.